Привет, it's inphlox, and welcome back to another episode of Level 25. I'm joined this week by Dimwit. Dimwit, how are you doing?
Hey, Influx. Glad to be here. Uh, yeah, I'm doing well.
Good.
I've really been looking forward to doing this since you contacted me a few days ago.
Well, I know that a couple people were specifically asking to hear you on the podcast, so I'm glad that you could make it.
Oh, that's very heartwarming.
It's an honor. Um, so the first question I have for you, I I don't want anyone to think that I am disparaging you by saying your name, Dimwit. How did you choose that name?
This might be one of my favorite ways of subtly trolling without trolling is hopping onto a stream that I've never been on before and commenting something that the for streamers they have this thing that pops up that says, "Oh, a first-time chatter has said something,"
Mm.
and then they're very encouraged to reply. It's always fun to hear them stumble a bit and try to decide whether they're going to say dimwit or not. You can always hear it in their voice. They're like, "Ah, now I have to say this." Uh, this was my idea of a clever username when I was 12 and sitting on the toilet, and my dad knocked on the door and he said, "Hey, I'm setting up our new email accounts. We finally had an ISP that offered us multiple email addresses. What a luxury!"
Ooh.
And he wanted to know what email address I should have, and
You chose Dimwit.
this was the thing that I thought was clever and funny at age 12, and I have not yet grown out of it. So DMW are my initials, so
Oh,
it's not
nice.
completely out of thin air, but
Well, that's a
yeah.
clever little tie. I thought that it might have been some sort of misnomer, a strategy out of the art of war or something to throw your throw your opponents off.
Get people to underestimate me and then
Oh, that Dimwit.
rub their noses in it. Not really my style.
So, what's your Dr. Mario story? What do you enjoy about the game?
What do we enjoy about the game? Okay, so there's what attracted me and there's what kept me. So the thing that I enjoy about the game now that has kept me is I feel like in a lot of games when you get to the level of playing at speedrunner skill, there's um, very often bugs and glitches and exploits that are a core part of the run.
Mm-hmm.
And um, even if there's not, like, the strategies that you employ in a speed run are very different from the strategies that you would employ if you just wanted to play it well, sort of.
Yeah.
And I find that a little bit dissatisfying because you're almost playing a different game at that point. And I felt like Dr. Mario is about the purest form that I've seen, purest game that I've seen, where the speedrun players were just doing a better job of playing the same game that everybody else was playing.
Mm.
So I really like that about that. I like that it's the same game that I can sort of slowly grow, and if I enjoyed it before, then I'll probably enjoy it even once I've started speedrunning it and have to, take the best strategies into account rather than whatever comes to the top of my head.
So it'll probably be a while before we see you execute that glitch where a large combo just eliminates the entire board.
Well, okay, so now we come to the thing that attracted me to Dr. Mario. So the reason that I got started on NES Dr. Mario speedrunning was I saw the TAS that got a crazy time on level 20 because It just spent like 30 seconds setting up the board, and then the whole board was gone in one clear.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, that is the way to do this well. And so I went to look at the leaderboards, and none of the leaderboards were doing that. And I was like, wow, so if I can do that, I have a chance. There's like a hole. There's a hole in the world record. If I can learn to do that, and it doesn't look that hard. Like,
Yeah.
it's definitely requires some thinking and some learning, but I feel like it's a thing that you can fairly reliably do if you're trying to do it. So I was hoping, to one day have a world record because I was the first to use that glitch in an actual run. It didn't quite end up going like that, and now there's a separate category for runs that have that in it. But it's definitely still something that gives me a little bit of joy every time I manage to pull it off. And actually, one of my previous PBs on speedrun.whatever had an instance of the glitch in it, and I had to get a ruling about whether that had actually helped the run speed up or not, and therefore invalidated the run or caused it to go into the glitched category.
Interesting.
So in that particular one, the glitch didn't actually clear any extra viruses, so they decided that they could leave it in the glitchless category, even though it technically triggered that glitch.
Well, that's really cool. I didn't know all that. And your speedrun.com times in what's become the most popular category, like the no glitch, no RNG manipulation, your times are good. You're ranked 5 in the 0 to 10 and 7 in 0 to 20. So when you stream, and I noticed that you stream a fair share of pills, what's your competitive drive? What are you trying to achieve? Are you still gunning for world record, or are you just trying to PB, or are you just trying to have fun?
So it's complicated, as I expected is for most players. Like, I certainly wouldn't turn down a PB every single night and a world record every single night. But so the thing that I really want to deliver is an excellent performance. And whether that ends up being a PB or not is a little bit secondary. But the thing that I want to show is like a beautiful version of the game where there's not a lot of misdrops and the strategy feels natural and good to other experts. And if I manage to pull off one or two ridiculous things that make other experts say, wow, that's like the cherry on top. That's kind of the thing that drives me. I guess in terms of streaming, like I've always said that basically I stream because it's a convenient way to get a recording of the thing that I'm doing for practicing to try to get a speedrun.com slot. I am going to be recording it anyway, so I might as well toss it up on Twitch, and if somebody else wants to see it, that's sort of their fault. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess the thing that I'm aiming for is a beautiful game, and anybody else's concerns or interactions with the game are not really a part of my motivation.
That's really cool. I have a lot of respect for that. And what's beautiful about the game isn't always what's fast about the game too, the score glitches and these elaborate dropping combos. I've probably shouted them out before already, but Tag Alone plays Dr. Mario 64, streams it every once in a while, and just does monster combos, and it doesn't have an interest in the speedrun aspect of it as much as just the beautiful puzzle-solving bit that it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've seen some of his play, her play, whatever. And yeah, the combos are unbelievable. Like whole level clears on not the first 5 levels, not only the first 5 levels.
Yeah.
So it's pretty bonkers.
I have a different approach when I'm playing, and particularly when I'm streaming. I feel a little bad for my viewers because I reset a ton. I am very motivated by competition, so the world record is something that I see as eventually achievable, and it's something that I'm trying to push myself towards all the time. So in the end, a personal best is always going to excite me, but I'm not going to feel satisfied and just like I can rest on my laurels until I'm at the top spot, which is a difficult motivator for sure, because I'm probably never going to get there. Or I could get there, but if I do get there, so many other people are trying for the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a completely natural way to engage with a lot of these speedruns. You see the best thing and you're like, I want to be the best. And I think that makes a lot of sense and can definitely be very, very motivating.
So the question that I've been trying to build up to clumsily is, when should you reset your run?
First of all, that's a great question. And it's one of those questions that, like, there's so many different ways to engage with that question. And it's tough to know what is the right one to start with. So one thing is that, like, it really depends a lot on your goals, right? So as you say, if your goal is, well, world record or bust, that's a very different goal than show a beautiful game, right? So for me, it's actually kind of recent that I have started having resets in my runs at all.
Oh.
I mean, I used to just stream 0 to 20 straight through every single time and keep trying on 20 every time I topped out, because that's just how I played. And that's very satisfying to me, but it's definitely not satisfying to everybody. So there's a second question, which is like, if I have a specific time that I want to finish in, then when should I reset? And I've actually spent a pretty fair chunk of time thinking about, like, how to define a mathematical framework that would let me answer that question in a, like, principled way. And that was spawned from thinking about, so I don't know if you knew this, but I wrote my own speedrun timer.
I didn't. I think I see it on your stream.
Yeah, the one that I use on my stream is the one that I wrote.
Yeah, I didn't know you wrote that. That's really cool.
And the motivation for creating that was, I felt like all of the existing speedrun timers were sort of reporting the statistics that were easy to compute rather than the statistics that you cared to look at and wanted to know about. And so I was going to write my own timer, by golly, and have it show the things that I cared about seeing. And if it took, if it took a lot of time to compute, then, well, I'll just have my computer be spending a lot of time computing while I play. And one of the outcomes of that was I kept thinking up new and more complicated statistics that I wanted to see about my past runs. And at some point I was just like, okay, I need to figure out what it is that I am trying to get out of these statistics, and then find the statistic that does that. So I spent a little while thinking about that, and I think people use these statistics in basically two ways. One way is as a sort of positive reinforcement thing. When they do something great, they get reminded that they just did something great. And that's very motivating and gets you to keep coming back and playing more. And that is a very positive thing towards both improving and enjoying yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I think people use these statistics for is to decide when to reset. Eventually, I would like to have my speedrun timer have just one statistic, which is thumbs up, thumb down, should I reset right now? And the criteria that I think is the sensible, principled mathematical criteria is if the expected amount of time to finishing a run in your goal time is shorter when you reset right now than it would be if you were to continue the run, then you should reset. And I think it's basically as simple as that. Now, that's a definition, unfortunately, and not a description of how to compute when to reset. And that's much harder, something that I've spent a long time thinking about since then, and never quite gotten something that I found satisfying as an answer. But I think it's basically as simple as working out what is the rule that reduces the expected runtime to hitting my target as much as possible. And you can use statistics about your previous runs to help you evaluate different rules and decide which one is the best. I've been meaning to do a write-up, and maybe someday I actually will, but...
Well, if you do, I'll definitely read it, because I'm fascinated by this stuff, even if I can't understand it. Those of us who don't use your timer, so the rest of the world, I think.
Yes.
I've heard Mole say it a lot of times. I know my splits. He knows that if he's not ahead of his personal best by a certain level, if he's not ahead by a certain margin, then he should just reset, even if he's in the green, because the last half of his run is just too strong and he's not going to gain time on it. I have the same thing with my personal best. I've been sitting on my 0 to 20 PB for a while, so I've gotten very familiar with the splits, and most of the time I'm resetting at level 5 if I don't have a time that I am happy with. I'm looking at my run statistics right now. I have 46 completed runs over my career as a Dr. Mario player, and I have over 2,033 attempts logged. So
we play in a very different way.
Yes. So I find it so interesting that you have such solid leaderboard times for resetting so infrequently. But I think that I am perhaps falling into the other side of the rut, which is resetting too often on runs that realistically could probably personal best. Like, the first 5 minutes are not going to make or break a 40-minute run.
That's absolutely right. I think a lot of the variability in Dr. Mario runtimes comes from the last few levels. And this is partly because the RNG has the most control over how efficiently you can do things in the last levels. But also partly because the last few levels also have the majority of the viruses.
Also true.
Yeah, it's tough. One of the things that I added to my timer as a statistic that I thought would be interesting was the expected number of runs that it would take for me to PB if I started from this moment and played a ton of runs starting from that time and that number of viruses cleared.
Oh, okay.
Basically. And I think that's one of the things that can be used as a pretty decent rule of thumb. Like, as you get later in the run, you want that number to be going down to 2 or 1, under 10, something like that. At the start of the run, you expect it to be about as big as the total number of runs that you've done, basically.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've noticed over the course of doing many runs with this timer is that the first few levels basically don't change that number at all, unless sometimes something really bonkers has gone wrong, and then you'll notice it go up. But mostly, a little ahead here, a little behind there, evens out much later, sort of.
I'll have to keep that in mind. Because another thing I've noticed is I'm a lot weaker at the later levels because I reset so much. There are different strategies when you're playing with almost no viruses on the board versus when it's crammed almost as full as it can be.
I played around for a little bit with playing 18, 19, 20 first, and then 0 through 17.
Oh, interesting.
That's my run. Huh. But then they changed the rules to make that make that not allowed, and I played with that less. But yeah, I was sort of thinking something similar to what we've been talking about here, which is that since the majority of the time and the majority of the variability comes from the end of the run, you want to put the variability up front in your run so you know whether to continue or not, sort of. But yeah, can't do that anymore. Bummer.
Another thing that I think causes me to reset a lot is this idea of perfectionism. I feel like every pill has its place, and when I put enough pills in the wrong places or misflip enough, it really puts me in a bad mood, and it's tough for me to continue that run. But I'm curious because I remember a while back in one of the weekly checkups, I asked if people thought that every pill had a correct placement, and people seem to be on both sides of the camp on that issue, and I'm wondering where you stand.
So I think the answer is trivially yes, there is a correct spot. But the real question is not, is there a correct spot? It's how good can a human player get at identifying the correct spot in time?
Yeah.
And I think basically that's not going to happen ever, ever, ever for any human player, no matter how good. And so the alternative is to try to get a really good spot.
Yeah.
And I think that's a thing that you can train yourself to do. And you can sort of go back and forth between, okay, for the next few runs, I'm going to try to figure out from first principles what is the good spot. And therefore, get better at working out what are the rules that help me decide where to place a pill.
Yeah.
On the one hand. And on the other hand, every few runs, you definitely want to go back to the mode of okay, on this run, I'm going to play the first move that comes to my mind instantly every time and see how that does. Because the way that you're going to get a fast run is by having trained yourself to be really good at identifying a pretty good move instantly and then playing it.
Yeah, because even if you're a little less efficient, if you're taking 4 or 5 seconds to figure out where the pill belongs, you could have easily dropped 2 or 3 pills in that time.
Absolutely, yeah. But I want to touch on something else you said, because I think there's something else interesting here.
Okay.
So one of the things you said is, I misdrop, and then I get frustrated. And I think that's really, really easy to do. I don't think that's just you. I think that's... certainly everybody does that from time to time. And I think it's really interesting to think about, what are the alternatives to that? So I found 2 alternatives that help keep me in the moment. So The first alternative is, one of the fun things about a misdrop is it puts you in a state that nobody else has ever been in. So with all the other things that you might do, especially on the NES, there's only 30,000 seeds or something. and people are
Okay.
playing thousands of runs per person. So you're probably seeing a seed that somebody else has played at some point. But when you make a misdrop, all of a sudden you're somewhere that nobody else in the world has ever been, and you get to have this new puzzle that nobody else has ever solved. And I think that's so fun. And at the times that I can remember that, I really get to enjoy that as a bit of flavor in my run.
I think that's a great sentiment, and I would definitely have a good chuckle over that as I reset the run immediately.
The other thing that I found that's helped me is a big part of what makes the game fun is, the puzzle solving aspect of it. And one of the things that you can ask yourself after you've made a misdrop is there some play that I can make that makes that misdrop look good?
Yeah.
And this is a thing that I've done like audibly on stream many times to remind myself that this is a good attitude to take. I will do something dumb and then I'll go, oh, is there something that I can do? Like, can I make that look good? And often, like, there's enough different plans in Dr. Mario that you can almost always find some way to make it look good. Maybe you take a horizontal clear that you were previously thinking was going to be a vertical clear and get it to drop down in line with some virus, or maybe you use it as part of some color diversity that you didn't have before, or there's just so many different things that you can do with a misdropped piece to try to make it look good. And it's fun to get to think about, like, okay, how do I make a new plan that works around this thing that I've done?
Yeah.
So anyway, those are the two things. I thought this was an important thing for people to think and talk about from time to time.
For sure. And it's actually something that I've really enjoyed about Versus. I haven't played very much of it, but I kind of like the garbage falling. It's an interesting variation to the puzzle. It gets kind of straightforward and kind of stale when you're just playing your own game and drilling down quickly. But having new elements, new pieces being thrown in as you're completing it, there's something satisfying about it. So maybe seeing it as single player versus garbage rather than the consequence of a brain fart or a slipped finger.
I love that idea. And I totally agree. There's something very charming about versus code and getting some garbage and having to adjust your plans and think on your feet and so forth. I guess I find the, like, not being able to play for a little while a little less charming, but
yeah,
having a new... I mean, I'm here to play the game. All that time that I'm spending not playing the game means that it's time I'm spending not playing the game.
It's time to trash talk. So the November brackets are already open for qualifying. Are you going to do a run soon?
Well, I try to participate just about every month that I am not literally going to be in a different location than my computer is.
Yeah.
So I think you can definitely look forward to seeing a qualifying run or two from me. I don't know about soon. I think I am a chronic procrastinator. And I think it's extremely likely that I will put it off until the day before the deadline, as I do with everything else in my life. But you can expect to see a run from me, I would say.
Well, if you put it off, then you can choose your opponent like you did last month.
Oh my goodness. I feel kind of bad about that. I mean... Yeah, I've been in the spot before where I am playing against somebody else excellent in the first round and facing elimination and either getting eliminated or not. And it's really frustrating to walk away from that thinking like, well, I had a good chance at this, and the fact that I didn't get to show that to people is really frustrating, and the fact that I didn't get to participate in the rest of the match is really frustrating. So I feel a bit bad about that, facing off with another really excellent player in the first round, and then
Although,
one of us not getting to participate for the rest.
yeah, but anyone who's playing in the bracket has to understand that there's only one winner, and it can't be them all every time. And that's the flip side of the coin is you hope for the victory, but you also need to be prepared to face a loss.
Of course, yep. Something that I heard from Serious Producer's stream that stuck with me and really felt true about these things is that you should have something that you want to show people during the tournament. And then you get to consider it a success if you succeeded in showing that. Whether you won or not is almost immaterial next to did I live up to the principle that I had for myself coming into this?
Yeah.
And I think it's much easier to live up to a principle for yourself than it is to live up to an expectation of a specific result.
Yes, for sure.
So I really liked that sentiment, and I've tried to work out what it is that I bring. And as I said, I think several times on the Dr. Mario tournament stream, and even in this call as well, I think it's really, I'd like to show off a beautiful game.
Well, Dimwit, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thanks again for joining me.
Absolutely. This was a blast. I really enjoyed chatting with you, inphlox.
And thank you at home for listening in. Until next week, in Dr. Mario and in life, bless RNG.